In all the topics, and if you want to ask some questions, you can jump in as well when the opportunity presents itself. I'll start left to right. Gentleman is a native of Ludlow, Mississippi. First round draft pick out of Ole Miss in 2001 by your New Orleans Saints. He started for the Saints beginning in 2001, played through 2008, was a member of the team in 2009, a two-time Pro Bowler, retired as the leading rusher in franchise history with 6,096 yards. He was inducted into the Saints Hall of Fame in 2012 in his first year of eligibility, and he's now the color analyst on the New Orleans Saints radio network. Please give a warm welcome to Deuce McAllister. Speaking of horse racing, a native of Louisville, Kentucky, graduated from the University of Louisville. Got it right, there we go. He's worked for the Times-Picayune and NOLA.com since 1999, covering the Saints, the Pelicans, horse racing, and serving as a primary columnist. He's accumulated many awards and has written a book, Tales from the Saints Sideline. Please give a warm welcome to Jeff Duncan. Jeff. Appropriately, he's a native of Carville, Louisiana, and he and his wife, Mary, reside in New Orleans. They served as the co-chairs for Super Bowl in New Orleans, most recently, of course, in 2013, and did a phenomenal job. He served as a professor at Tulane University. He's an avid LSU fan as well. Please give a very warm welcome to James Carville. James. Approaching his 40th year in the industry, he's won many local and state awards for his work and has created the show Friday Night Football, which has been mentioned already. Serves as co-host of that show on WGNO and WNOL. He serves as a co-host or tri-host of the Three Tailgaters show on WGSO 990 AM and is a regular columnist for SportsNOLA.com and the Clarion Herald. Please give a warm welcome to Mr. Ed Daniels. Ed? We'll start the discussion with the Saints. Since Deuce is here, we'll go with Deuce first. Okay, Deuce, will the Saints make the playoffs? If so, why? If not, why not?
Playoffs.
Next question, Jeff Duncan.
Too early. Right now you have the benefit of a jumbled NFC South, honestly. So you can be in that conversation, but I think even with the recent success before Sunday's loss, you still have a young team in a lot of senses. And with having a young team, there will be some great moments, and then there are going to be some disappointing moments. They're growing up in front of us, particularly defensively, and you're starting to get some healthy guys back offensively. But as we saw, there's still little mistakes that they make. We saw that on Sunday. You go back a couple weeks ago, we're running into Tommy Lee Lewis and running into the punter. There's just small things that is beating this team. And I don't know when that light finally goes off and they cleaned it up, will they have the opportunity to still be in that race? So right now, they still have a chance. But, you've got a tall task on Thursday.
Jeff?
Well, I think Deuce is spot on. They play so many 50-50 games that it's almost impossible to predict how they're going to do. That game Sunday was a prime example. Could have gone either way. It comes down to the craziest play I've seen in a long time. And they've been in a number of those this year because they're not as good as they were, say, in 2011, 2009, where they had a much larger margin for error. So right now, but I will say this, I think you'd agree, Deuce, Sean Payton is really confident right now. You can sense it in the way he's talking. He likes where they're at because of the improvement on the defensive side of the ball and the running game. They're able to win some games now, or at least make positive plays that can impact a game with other facets besides Drew throwing for 400 yards. So I think that's encouraging.
James?
I gotta say, we're better than I thought we'd be. I guess I didn't think we were going to be very good, and we're actually pretty good. The thing Sunday, I watched it over and over, and the only way that he's not out of bounds if the guy has half a foot. Assuming he has a whole foot, you can see half the foot was inbound. If you take the assumption that he has a whole foot, then he was out of bounds. But maybe Deuce, maybe y'all tell me, it seems to me that if you told me we would be here right now, I would have been a little surprised on the upside.
Well, the only half-a-foot guy is Tom Dempsey, right? So we know that wouldn't.
Oh, that game?
Yeah. No, I think they are better. I think everybody, especially from 0-3, right? 0-3 start.
Well, we still have a losing record, so it's not like you're very good, but you've been in every ball game except really Atlanta, and so you've probably competed. So many people talked about this stretch of scheduling that you were going to go through with the Seattle, with Denver, with Carolina twice. Everybody expected you to be go over in that stretch, or at least, at best, probably 2 for 6. And, you were able to beat Carolina the first time. Obviously, you beat Seattle. So, things were looking up. But for me, and to be around that team enough, they're still young. And so they still don't know what it takes to win on a consistent basis. And that's what they're trying to figure out and learn.
Ed?
Well, I had a friend who went out to Vegas before the season, and his wife called me and said, what should he do? The total was 7. Should he bet the over or the under? I said, bet the over. And I thought the Saints would be about an 8-18 this year. Now, to me, going forward, look, we know what's happened thus far. Blocked field goal against the Giants and the blocked PAT. If not, they're 6-3 and they're leading the division. But that's the NFL. There's about 20 teams you can make a case for who are in that gumbo. So I think moving forward is this. Got to beat Carolina on Thursday night. If you're 4-6 at that point, if you don't win that game, the math to 9-7, where I think you got to go, doesn't really work. You got to win 5 of the last 6. That's going to be tough to do. Now, if the Saints can beat Carolina, then I think the key games down the stretch are these. I don't think they're going to get the wild card, but they might. But if somehow they beat Carolina, they get back to 5-5. Detroit at home is a game they've got to win, and they've got to beat the Falcons on the road, because all of those games figure big in the tiebreak. The one thing you don't want it to happen is to come down to the last game of the season, and all of a sudden it's them and the Giants. And you know what happened in New York, and they have the tiebreak on you. So, Coach Willie Fritz today talked about the margin of error for his Tulane team at his press conference, and I think the same thing can be said about the Saints. There's a path to get there, but you've got to win Thursday night, because if not, you're 4-6 and you've got to win 5 of the last 6 to get to 9. That's going to be tough to do.
All right, so since you mentioned Tulane, I'll start with you. Can Willie Fritz win at Tulane, and is Yeoman Stadium a positive for Tulane?
Willie Fritz can win at Tulane. I asked him a couple weeks ago if he's getting everything he needs, and he says yes. And he said it, I don't think he's a guy who would mislead me. And I think he's getting the support he needs from the university. I've never been a fan of Yeoman Stadium. I think what Tulane University should have done was one of 2 things. Build a state-of-the-art practice facility and play at the Superdome, or build a basketball arena. And the reason why fans have not gone to Tulane games over the last several decades is because, number one, you weren't winning. And then when the landscape of college football changed and you could no longer schedule up high as an independent, you were in a league where a lot of people aren't interested in your opposition. So that's why something like the Big 12 would be gigantic. But I would ask this question, even if that happened at some point, would you play Oklahoma, and would you play the University of Texas at Yeoman Stadium? I think we all know the answer to that one.
James?
Well, I mean, look, I'm teaching Tulane, and I think this guy's like a good coach, but they've had a difficult history with football. I mean, if you stop and you think in 1966 when they got out of the conference, Vanderbilt stayed in, they just cashed the checks. They never beat Alabama, but they cashed a lot of checks. And, when obviously they had to do something with the old Sugar Bowl, but if they would have built a, 50, 55,000 seat stadium on there, but that's the story of Tulane football. It's what Bo Strahan said about the Palestinians. They never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. But I think if they are, hopefully they're in the right direction now. They've had some, they've made some kind of choices that haven't turned out that great for them.
Well, I think the American Athletic Conference, though, is an upgrade. And I think the quality of opponent in there, you've got a Houston or Memphis or UConn, fans will come out for that. I just think that when you're at where Tulane is at and where they were before they hired Willie Fritz, you've got to take gradual steps to improvement. So they're not going to build a 60,000 seat.
No, I know that, but I thought they were going to beat 60-0 by Houston.
Right.
Okay, right. They played. The guy's he's done a heck of a job.
Coach Fritz is the right coach. I mean, he's the right coach for the program, particularly, for the athlete, the student athlete that you're going to get. I think it's like the other guys have said, what's probably happening, and Jeff may not agree, they have got to get to a conference that the financial piece is there for them. I mean, because that's the biggest problem with a lot of schools that aren't in a Power 5. you're going to attract an athlete, which is great, you know, because all kids have the opportunity and need the opportunity to play. But it's the financial piece that hurts them so much, where if you don't have an innovative system, you know, it's just not going to work, and you're not going to have the fan support.
You know what troubles me? Here's one thing that troubles me, Deuce. When I was a kid, okay, my relatives, aunt and uncle lived on Flower Street, right off Nashville, 4 blocks to walk to the stadium. My father took me to game after game after game when I was a kid. I loved it, okay? That's how I got to be a big college football fan. I'm old enough to remember before there was pro football in New Orleans, there was college football, and it was big. And Tulane and LSU in New Orleans, it was a 50-50 deal. Now it's 95-5. And the thing that I'm worried about is that you've lost several generations of people who have had that experience. And people, to me, they talk about the students and all these other things. The thing that you have to do if you're Tulane is get the ticket buying public back, who, even though they didn't go to school there, they consider Tulane to be the city's university. And I don't think they have that anymore.
Agreed. Let's talk about LSU. We'll start with Deuce. Coach O, the subject was brought up earlier. Is there a realistic chance that he can keep that job at LSU after this year? And this coming from an Ole Miss man, where Coach Orgeron was the head coach.
Well, I really like Coach O, so you know we can take the unpleasant experience that he had up in Oxford, take it off the table. I really got to know him for the year that he spent down in New Orleans as a defensive line coach. He can win out and probably still, in a lot of circles outside of Louisiana and even in Louisiana, won't get a fair chance at that job. And that's just because maybe the wrong people are in charge, and that's just being honest. I mean, he is going to recruit relentlessly. I know he's not a Red Bull guy. I think he's a Monsters guy now, you know, as far as his energy to drink. He's going to be a guy that the players will play for. He's going to be real personable. You know, the only thing, and I know he is close to Steve, who is the offensive coordinator now. I think that's where he would have to get more creative and have to bring in an OC. And then obviously keep Dave would be the other part if he does get that job. But, you know, honestly, even if he wins out, I don't know how much of a fight or a chance they're going to give to him to keep that job.
Jeff?
Well, look, I think when he was named interim head coach, I was very skeptical, but I like everything he's done so far. I don't see how you could have any complaints about the moves he's made, and the popularity he's built up in the state would be tremendous. Now, is that going to be sustainable once he becomes the man? I think that's the question that the power brokers down at LSU have. Is he going to be able to put together a staff? Say, for instance, if Dave Aranda is recruited away to Texas to go with Tom Herman, which is a real possibility. Can Coach O put together the offensive coordinator you're talking about and the defensive coordinator? Because those are the guys putting together the game plans. I think Ed Orgeron is a perfect head coach if you can have that staff intact. That's the question.
James?
Well, I look at LSU the way that the first president of LSU, William Tecumseh Sherman, said of Grant. He was with me when I was crazy, and I was with him when he was drunk. I mean, LSU was with me when I was drunk and crazy, so I'm going to be with them, no matter what they do. I want to address something. There's a fascination in Louisiana that I don't quite understand with outside expertise. We always believe somebody's going to come in and save us. That if we just get a nationwide committee or something, and based on what I've seen so far, I got to say the guys, I mean, these kids are playing like crazy for him. The preparation for the Arkansas game was off the charts. Any gambler says that's a classic trap game. You're going the week after Alabama, you're going up to Fayetteville where they play well. And right now, you know, let's stay focused on Florida. But I just, from somebody that was here, left, came back, I'm always amused and slightly vexed by the idea that we don't have talented people here. And by the way, when it comes to football, LSU's got more people in the NFL than anybody else. They got more people per capita from the New Orleans area than any other place in the country. And but I mean, if they hire somebody else, I'm gonna stand with them, and I'm gonna salute the flag. But I just always some of the most talented, smart, clever people I've ever known in my life have been from Louisiana. And I just think as a state, we got to understand that we got some pretty good people here.
Ed?
Well, let's look at what happened the last 2 years. Les Miles was 1-5 against Ole Miss, Arkansas, and Alabama. And that's where the job is won and lost, right? 1-5. 4 of those losses were bad losses, weren't close. Ed Ogeron defeated Arkansas, defeated Ole Miss, and was scoreless with Alabama to the 4th quarter. Okay, that's a pretty remarkable accomplishment. I think he's provided decisiveness. I think he's provided leadership, without a doubt. And I think Ed Ogeron understands what wins and loses. I would ask you, if any of you watched the Alabama-Mississippi State game over the weekend, is Nick Saban 48 points better a coach than Dan Mullen? The answer is absolutely not. And I think Coach O understands what wins and what loses. I had a coach tell me a couple of weeks ago, a high school coach, until Eddie Jackson got hurt, Alabama was starting 11 5-star players on defense. And I would ask the administration at LSU this question, if they were to ask me, which they won't, but I'll ask them this question. Is Jimbo Fisher going to out-recruit Ed Ogeron in the state of Louisiana?
I mean, this is one thing that really gets under my skin, and that's the...
There's a lot of things that get under your skin.
The expectations at LSU are just too high. Oh, no, they're not. When you got the highest paid assistants in the world, and you put 102,000 in the stadium, and you're the only Power 5 school in the hottest recruiting area in the country, you're supposed to win. I mean, I know you're not going to beat Alabama every year, but you're supposed to win. And people, Tulane is a different thing. LSU, you get 10-win season where they spot you 4 to start. But you're exactly right. We can't play against these good teams like that.
The only concern I would have about what you said about having talented people in the state is the athletic director and the president are not from the state.
Well,
okay.
I think, anybody...
So, I don't know if anybody
if he
from the
wins out,
state
if he loses, look, if he wins out, but I'm just making a general thing. I'm going to be for them, whatever they do.
James, there's a lot of things that gets under your skin, but here's the question I have, though. If they hadn't have made the move, would LSU not have beat the teams that they beat anyway and still lost to Alabama if Miles was the coach?
Well, Deuce, the only thing I can say is that you look at the comparables, okay? The last 2 years, LSU had scored 14 points against Arkansas. They scored 38 in Fayetteville
and got whipped up front in both of those games.
And they got whipped up front in both of those games. And the one thing that I like about Coach O, among many things, is that he is willing to let his coaches coach. He doesn't tell Dave Aranda anything. If Dave Aranda told him that the sun came up at 3 a.m. tomorrow, he'd believe it, okay? He doesn't, and he lets Ensminger run the offense. And I think that kind of philosophy will allow Coach Ogeron the ability, that and the money, to attract quality coordinators. People come and people go. Kirby Smart left Alabama this year. I don't see their defense backing off at all. I think the guy's done a good job. And again, Coach Ogeron understands what wins. And another thing he's going to do, if he gets the job, is he's going to recruit the quarterback position. I guarantee you, LSU will not be in the lurch ever again when they need quality quarterbacking. They will not be where they've been since Matt Flynn left in 2007.
One of the wild card thing to consider here is if they win out, which means they beat Florida and A&M, they're going to the All-State Sugar Bowl. And if they come to New Orleans and play in the All-State Sugar Bowl and win that game too, pressure's going to be enormous to retain him.
Well, they want to get a coach in before the All-State.
Yeah, they got to make a decision. Yeah,
make a decision.
Oh, by the way, this guy won every game and lost to Alabama by 10, but he's our interim coach. Good luck with him.
And here's the thing: who's the home run hire out there? Say if you don't get Jimbo Fisher, there isn't a home run hire. And I've had people say, oh, they need to be able to compete with Alabama. Well, who can compete with Alabama right now? I mean, they should, and they competed well. But that's a 500-pound gorilla in the division that they've got to deal with.
Yeah. To me, recruiting, okay? He said the right thing last Monday after the Alabama game. We need first-round picks blocking their first round picks. All right? He's absolutely
No doubt.
10,000% right.
That's where they lost. All right.
Look, I played high school football at Ascension Catholic, and that was the old district. We played Assumption and LaRose, Rose cut off, Raceland, up since before consolidation. So, and Coach, I used to teach school in Back Vashey. I'm sorry, South Vashey. I'm not supposed to say Back Vashey, but you know what I'm talking about. So look, you got a guy from LaRose, and he's winning. Let's be happy.
Amen.
You know, just like me, just an old Cajun sapsucker, but he's winning.
All right, here's a great topic. Most recently, you saw this past week that New Orleans landed a Final Four. Jay Cicero's in the room. Congratulations to Jay. New Orleans, as mentioned, last hosted the Super Bowl, and James chaired the committee back in 2013. Will New Orleans ever get another Super Bowl with the Superdome as its home facility? Ed, I'll start with you.
Should. I've been to a lot of these other Super Bowl cities, you know, and I know it boils down to money and a lot of different things, but I've been to a lot of these other places, and I know one thing: when I'm in New Orleans, I don't have to drive an hour from one practice to the next. And there's no better big event town in this entire country than New Orleans, Louisiana. Now, you know, who knows though? Okay, because you know, if the Raiders move to Las Vegas and build a new stadium, they're getting a Super Bowl. If you know, I mean, that's the issue that you face. But I think we should. But okay, so we're going to get a new stadium. How much is it going to cost, and where are we going to build it?
Yeah, look, y'all want the truth, you want to make it feel good.
True.
The truth is, we'll get another Super Bowl when the public stops funding stadiums in other cities. Because you're dealing with as Trump would say, it's a rigged deal. All right, if you get the money to get the stadium, the deal is you get the game. And for the life of me, I don't see why. I think the Super Bowl is an unbelievable place for a football game. If you live in any other city and you go to a game, it takes you an hour and a half to get there. And I think they put a lot of money in there. I don't think, honestly, and Deuce, I mean, you know, I'm sitting in front of you, I think we got a good stadium. I really do. And they keep upgrading it, and if you live in the city of New Orleans, as I do, I can get from my house to my seat in a half hour. You cannot, in Washington, I wouldn't go to a Redskin game if you gave me the franchise.
Yeah, you would.
All right, Jeff.
Look, they're going to get the next Super Bowl we bid on. We're going to get that. I'm sure Jay and Sam are cringing right now because I'm putting the pressure on, but it's going to happen. I mean, Roger Goodell pretty much said as much at the last round at the owners' meetings in Charlotte because we lost another bid. But you're right, James. I mean, they're rewarding other cities. They're not. It's not an indictment on New Orleans. It's rewarding other cities. Once they get out of the cycle, we'll get back to the forefront.
And it comes down to new stadiums, as these guys have said, and you know, for the players particularly, you want somewhere close. You want somewhere where it's not, I've got to go over here and practice 45 minutes, or I got to relocate because there's no hotels. I don't think that any team would mind staying in Metairie because there's so much going on downtown, you know, but that's only a 10-minute ride, you know, from either practice, 15-minute ride to downtown to the Dome. And just to pick the James a little bit, that was the last time I've been to his house, was in 3 years ago, 2013, and he has not invited me back since then.
All right, we got.
You're welcome anytime in my place.
Our bid that we do are so much better than anybody else's. Our presentation is so much better than anybody else's. If the journalists and everybody that covers the Super Bowl could vote, we would have it every year.
Amen.
But let me tell you, if Las Vegas gives them, you know, $750 million to build a stadium, we're going to lose.
There you go. It's all about the stadium.
No sense in sugarcoat.
All right, one final topic, then we'll take some questions. As you may have seen, most recently, the Zurich Classic is changing formats. It's going to be a team format starting with the event next year in 2017. Is that good or bad for New Orleans? Will it help attract more of the top players here? Ed, I know you cover the event. I'll start with you.
Well, I enjoy covering the Zurich Classic of New Orleans very much. It's a tremendous event, and it's so much different from anything else we do during the entire year that it really is a lot of fun. And you know what? hey, I think a lot of people would object to change. I don't. And if it makes the event more interesting, then I think I'm all for it. You know, I've seen the Zurich do everything they can to get players here. Their purse is extremely competitive. They pamper the players. The problem is sometimes the dates just don't match up and they don't get a lot of guys that maybe they should. So the course is also an issue. It's a good point, Kenny. And I think that's a big decision moving forward. And I know no one in the tournament wants to talk about it, but are they going to City Park in 5 or 6 years or not? Because that is believe me, you want to talking about something that is radioactive. When you ask the Zurich people about that, oh, I can't talk about that. I don't want to talk about that. But eventually, I do think it is going to City Park.
James?
I wouldn't know a golf ball from a pineapple, but the Zurich people have really been good in their commitment here. It's got to be commended. And not only I say it's like a very casual golf fan, the only thing I've ever seen anybody gather around a TV other than like a Masters or US Open is the Ryder Cup. For some reason, this kind of team play intrigues people. I give them credit. I mean, for what little bit I know about it, but it's not very much. People seem to really enjoy that. I mean, people were really into the Ryder Cup this year. You'd go to Marsault and people be gathering around and like cheering, so why not?
Jeff?
Well, look, the players like it, and that's important because you're going to be able to attract maybe better players to the field. But as James was talking about earlier about stadiums, what matters in this deal is money, and the money people involved in this tournament is Zurich. And as long as they're happy, that's the most important thing. And apparently they really are behind this team format. And if we can keep Zurich on as a title sponsor, that's the most important thing right now for the local PGA tournament. And as well with the City Park move. If they are involved with that, they're going to make that call eventually.
Good luck to that parking on Jazz Fest weekend. That'll be interesting.
Deuce?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is the date. You know, you have the date and what players can commit. You know, I think the two-player or the format that they're going to obviously is one that will bring in some excitement. But if you don't have the right players in, then I don't know if the draw will be any different. You know, the purse is fine. I don't think, you know, the purse has been the issue. But obviously the date with what other things are going on, not only here locally, the support here locally is always going to be there, but I mean, it's the date when you can draw top players from really around the world.
I think it's a multifaceted issue. It's not just the dates, which are part of it. It's also the course. It's also the location. If this event was in New Orleans, I think it would be much more attractive to the players that would want to come here. And if it was a new course, a different design, then that certainly would be more attractive as well. But it's been my experience over the years that if people are looking for excuses, they'll find them. So I'm all for trying something that will get people here. I'd be remiss before we take questions, ask quickly about the Pelicans. Deuce, obviously, they're not built to be a winner with what they have right now. You see change coming, yes or no?
They need some more wins, I know that much. I mean, you have a phenomenal player in Anthony Davis, and you know, to be snake bitten how they have been the last 3 years, really, it's just, you know, I can't put it all on the training staff. I can't put it all, you know, it's just, that's a question mark for someone else outside of myself to say that you've had so many players be injured, and, you know, they've tried. You know, you've tried head coaches. You've really tried new GMs to a point, but it just hadn't worked. It hadn't fitted, and, you know, in this city, obviously you have the parallel and the overlap of the Saints and Pelicans, but by the time the Saints are done playing, we're normally out of the race. So you can't attract or draw, you know, the crowd that you need to be able to support it. So it's something that's got to get figured out, and it's got to happen in a hurry.
Jeff?
Well, Deuce hit the nail on the head. Tom Benson's 89 right now. He made a major investment in that franchise. It's almost like he bought the worst house on the block for his second home, and it's appreciating in value, but it's not the home he's living in. That's the Saints. He's going to make money on the Pelicans, whether he invested in it or not right now. So I think that's an issue to some degree, but more than anything else is this going to continue to make money? If people stop coming to the games,
Like last night?
that's when Tom Benson's going to notice, and that is when they'll make a change.
James?
Well, I think it was Elliott. Yes, Elliott said that April is the coolest month. Well, tell you what, if you're a Clinton Democrat and a Pelican season ticket holder, it don't get any worse than November. I guarantee you. I'm not T.S. Eliot, but this has been a crappy month so far. Thank God. Yeah, I mean, look, of course they got to do something. I mean, you know, and I mean, we got a real superstar. I saw this guy play in the championship game in the Final Four here in New Orleans in a dome. And I would be curious to some of you more knowledgeable people is, you know, I had a chance. I still got my season tickets. They're great. I love to go to the games, but it's pretty painful.
Yeah. Well, they mortgaged the future, and they did that a few years ago, and now you got what you got. And the only thing I remember is a lot of the Pelicans basketball people telling me that Byron Scott played too much golf, and Jeff Bauer wasn't up to the position. The reason Jeff Bauer got fired because he wanted to trade Chris Paul to Portland for Nicholas Batum and a host of #1 draft choices. And he was ready to rebuild with Collison, Thornton, Nicholas Batum, and some other first-round picks. They didn't want to do that, and they tried to convince Chris Paul to stay, which he never was going to stay. So I'm not surprised they're at this point. It's a dead-end situation, as I think the Saints have seen in free agency. If you go out and sign a bunch of guys for top dollar, eventually that's a dead-end road. Your draft has got to produce, especially when you're a small market NBA team. And I just hope that we're not in a position that we were in with Baron Davis and Chris Paul when our superstar wants to leave. Because I guarantee you, New Orleans will never, ever, 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 ever see a big man with the talent of Anthony Davis and the quality of person that he is. We will never have another player like that, ever, as long as any of us are ever alive, ever.
All right, we got about 5-10 minutes. Some questions from the audience. Get the microphone, Jay, if we can get the microphone to those raising their hands. Just wait, we'll get it over to you so you can ask the question. And right over there. Over there.
This is for James. What was more disappointing? Saturday night, November 5th, Tuesday, November 8th.
I'm sworn off talking about politics today. I was disappointed. Honestly, I was kind of proud of our guys on November 5th. I mean, I was disappointed, but I mean, you couldn't. I mean, watching them play and as hard as they played, and we just, and Leonard, I felt, you know, I couldn't think of anything that he did wrong with, but 3 people hit you, you're going down. I mean, you know, particularly, you know, 3 first, second round draft picks. So the answer is that I was kind of proud of our coaches and our team against Alabama, although we lost the game. I know you shouldn't say that, but I certainly didn't feel like there was some of the other losses that we had. I mean, one of the worst losses I ever saw was Arkansas last year. I mean, I was at that game. That couldn't be anything worse than that. That's disappointing. The kids give their all. You know, if you're a football fan, if you're, you know, any kind of sports fan, if they give, the young people give their all, it's all you can ask out of them.
Next question.
Deuce, to answer your question, the LSU team would not have all the victories they had if he had not made a change at offensive coordinator, and he was not going to do that. So they would have probably had minimum 2 or possibly 3 losses.
I don't think so, but we can agree to disagree. We can agree to disagree.
Coming over here.
Obviously, these Saints suffered a heartbreaking loss Sunday.
Saints suffered a heartbreaking loss Sunday, and I personally have never seen until this year, like 3 or 4 times, the line hurdled over to block a kick. Nothing illegal or nothing dirty was done to do that, but it could see a change in the extra point. They already changed the extra point by moving it back to the 30-yard line, or wherever they moved it back to has happened. Do any of you foresee a change or something down the road,
Jeff?
if this starts happening quite often?
Well, you know, they just instituted the rules that the defense could score just in 2015, and there's a lot of criticism for that. I mean, why should the defense be allowed to score on an offensive extra point? You know, you're rewarding the offense with the extra point kick, and there was a lot of debate over that, and I could see eventually that coming back to the table. But it adds so much excitement to the game. Let's face it, the ratings are down. they're not going to take anything away. I think that adds that element. But I don't personally like it. I don't like it. And you're talking about the rule, Johnny. The rule, you know, that was a legal play. He's allowed to push down on the center with his open hand. There was nothing illegal in that except for him stepping out of bounds.
I got a little bit of a different, I mean, sports just punishes mistakes. In your professional football team, you're supposed to be able to keep the people from blocking your point after touchdown. I mean, this is not an uncommon play. All right?
I agree with you. And you know what, James?
It's not an uncommon play, and they did it, and we didn't stop them. And I mean, I hate to say it, but that's a big mistake.
And if you go back, and I'm going to steal Rick Gailey's thunder here for a minute, but if you go back and you look at the play, I counted. By the time the center looked down to snap the ball, it was 3 seconds before the ball was snapped, which doesn't happen a lot. Maybe there was a longer snap count or whatever. But he didn't see that guy coming because he wasn't looking at him for 3 seconds. And what happened was that ball should, as soon as he looked down, that ball should have been snapped. And if it would have been snapped on a 1 or a 2 count, and the center would have lifted his head, he would have had a much better chance of blocking that guy. And I like the play for one reason, even though it happens against the Saints. Everybody in the country is talking about it. And I think those kind of things are good for the game, not bad.
And Deuce, here's one thing for you since you played the game. They established the white border on the sideline for 2 reasons. Number 1, to distinguish when someone is out of bounds or inbounds, and number 2, for late hits.
Why do they let him wear white
shoes? So why exactly? The uniformed police, if he's not wearing a white shoe, even with the camera angles, it's going to be obvious whether he was in or out of bounds. Shouldn't there be some restrictions, or should there be some rules about the types of shoes you wear? Because as I understand it, certain guys can wear certain colors, only X number for a certain game. I asked the question, and that's the answer I got.
Yeah, because they have a Nike or Reebok endorsement agreement, so that's what shoe they have to wear. And obviously, this kid did not have that type of agreement. This was the only game this year that he has worn a white shoe.
Yes.
And it was just because we were indoors. And so he wanted to wear a white shoe. And also on the snap, there is no snap count. There is no snap count. There is no 1, 2, 3 hold. It's all when the holder is ready. The holder will always turn to the kicker to make sure that he's ready, and then he turns. And normally the snap goes 1 second, snap. So there's really no sound that the holder makes to the snapper. It's all about, he sees a wave. This game it may be 2 waves, and then you have 1,001, 1,002 snap. You know, a lot of it you don't get pressed against the play clock because, you know, normally you're going to have plenty of time to kick unless you're coming out after timeout, etc. But they normally always go in that routine. And what happened was all game long they had been timing the snap to see exactly what was the hold on extra points, what was the hold on field goals, and you don't use it if it's not going to affect the game, and that's when they chose to use that play. Jeff made the comment and the point about pushing down is legal. That is correct, but you can't tell me that Jed didn't feel a guy pushing down. There had to be some type of pull. You go back and look at that video, the umpire that's in the back, he goes and reaches for his flag, but he doesn't pull it.
Didn't pull it.
He didn't pull it, but he reaches for it, and he doesn't pull his flag. So you had 5 or 6 different things that happened on that play, and none of them were in our favor. I mean, all of them went the other way.
All right, we have time for 1 or 2 more, and then we'll close out. Over here, Ronnie. She's coming. Okay, there we go.
I probably don't need a microphone.
Well, we could use it for the webcast. Yeah, that's what we use it for.
No problem. This question is mainly for Mr. Carville, but it goes to anyone who's a football fan. As someone who does love college football, I'm a teacher. I just read an article that said LSU has more money on its athletic side than it has on its academic side. Given the news that we just read about TOPS this morning, how is it that LSU is really going to be able to get really good athletes to commit when it may be hard for a lot of students just to go to LSU?
That's a good question, and I'll point this out to you. LSU gives money to the university, like $10 million.
More than that. It's 18.
It's 18 now, and there are only like 5 teams that do that.
Florida, Tennessee are the only.
I can't tell you what a big recruiting thing. There was a front page story in the New York Times about how Alabama's success has transferred academically. But it's, if people say, well, we're a football school, you can have a good basketball team too. It's not a choice. You can have a good football team, you have a good English department. I mean, you don't have to make the pick. And I think your question is, it's Arjun is correct, but just so you know, the football team, the athletic department, which is the football team,
Makes money.
Baseball.
Okay, let's be honest, yeah. Well, baseball kind of breaks even, it's not a drain.
No, it's not a drain.
It's in most places. But it does, it's 18 million now, it's a significant check that the athletic department writes to the university that goes to help pay teachers and give scholarships and all the other stuff they do.
That's one subject that you will really never really hear about, as far as, because we know the financial situation with the university, you understand what it does for TOPS and being able to give scholarships. Well, being a part of the SEC and being able to raise, to get, let's just say every Saturday that Tiger Stadium opens up, that's probably about $8-9 million purse that the university gets. But it's not really the university. That goes to the athletic foundation. And so all that money is being stored up. Well, from the SEC network, Channel 82 for me, from that network, each school gets roughly 60 million, if not. That doesn't go to the university. That goes to athletics. Then you have another bowl money that's shared as well. And so there's a lot of revenue that goes directly towards athletics. That's how a school like Ole Miss, who doesn't have nearly the population or revenue coming in, can compete with the Florida as far as on some of the facilities, etc. They can't compete on anything else. You talk about salaries. LSU has the highest assistant coach salaries basically in the United States. Not just SEC, but that's because they have the funding and they set aside from the SEC network and the bowls.
I don't care what they pay them, just win.
Also, I think there's a business component to this. Every Saturday before the LSU game, Robert and I go to Zippy's, which is a little Mexican place right on Perkins Road. Go to Acadian, make a right, and there's Zippy's. And we went to Zippy's for the LSU-Alabama game at 1 o'clock in the afternoon because we wanted to beat the traffic. 1:30, place was packed. Okay, and that business was making a lot of money. And they aren't the only business around Baton Rouge who was making a lot of money off of LSU football. The hotels are filled, okay, and it is important to the community that is successful, because those Saturdays when LSU plays home football, those are their Mardi Gras. And they've got 6 or 7 of those a year. That's why I know LSU is, but I'm not a big proponent of moving games off of campus. And I know BYU is I think the opponent next year in Houston to start the season and all of that stuff. And to me, I think it's important that you play those games at home, because not only are they important to the university, but they're incredibly important to all the businesses in that area who thrive on those Saturdays.
Well, Ed, you got to remember, the school athletic foundation still gets their check. For LSU,
they do.
The athletic,
but I'm just saying,
the athletic part, they get to showcase.
Yeah, but Zippy's isn't getting a check, and that's disappointing.
Zippy's is the one that's going to suffer.
It didn't turn out right, but I liked us playing at Lambeau. I mean, I really thought that was a real added some. But the reason we play in BYU and Dallas is, I don't want to shock anybody, but Jerry Jones wrote a hell of a check.
I think it's Houston, no? Is it Houston?
Houston, I believe.
They put it in Houston, wherever we play.
Somebody wrote a check.
They write a big check, but I do. In Auburn, Alabama, I give them credit. The hell with Birmingham. They're gonna play. They're gonna play home and home, and there's nothing for an alum or anybody. There's nothing like it. When they, Louisiana Saturday night, man, wow.
Play at home. Ronnie, final question.
Really delightful to listen to these comments. One thing, if we had some refs that could run a 4-3, they would have saw that guy step out of bounds, you see.
You know what, Ronnie? Here's the thing that I would ask, one more thing about that whole deal, okay, is if it would have been Monday Night Football or Sunday Night Football, would there have been more cameras at the game, and would there have been a better look at it? Because look, if the referee had said he stepped out of bounds and Denver, okay, and they reviewed it again, it wouldn't have been reversed the other way. It was that close.
Right, I agree with that. But also, I said on your radio show, LSU could have been 7-0 going into Alabama, but Miles would still have been the coach. Or 5-2, and O's the coach. And the consensus of all the guys I talked to, they'd rather been 5-2, because it was a different LSU look. And I believe Florida hurt us, because we played a game, we were off. We played a game, we were off. Then we played Alabama. Not saying it would have been a difference in the Alabama game, but could have been in timing. And I think that was a real big deal. And then that last thing is, they don't have to go on a national search. All they got to do is walk down the hall, give the guy the check. Coach Hill.
Any thoughts, response?
I got one thing to say, and I've been wanting to say this a long time, Ronnie, okay? Timmy, roll the truck, I'll call Ford credit. I've been waiting to say that for a long time, okay?
All good. Ladies and gentlemen, let's thank Deuce McAllister. Also want to thank Jeff Duncan of NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. Raging Cajun, James Carville, who is a big sports aficionado. Ed Daniels of ABC 26. And as we close today, I'll ask Mr. Ronnie to come up and close us here with regale us with a tune here, Ronnie. You've never done this before, all right?
Testing.